Well, hello there. It's great to see you again. And it's the first time I've seen you on the Ezra file for some time. I'm very sorry. I haven't done very much with the Ezra file recently, but I have other projects that have demanded my time. But I've decided today I'm going to do an Ezra file. And that's because on this Ezra file, I'd like us to go back to one of the issues that we've looked at on a number of occasions in the Ezra file. I'd like us to go and spend a little bit of time to think about the subject of abortion. As I've just said, it's a subject we've covered a number of times over the years on the Ezra file, and it's right, I think, that we should revisit that today, especially in the light of the recent judgment of the Supreme Court of the United States of America, in which it overturned one of its previous deliberations on the subject of abortion. And I refer, of course, to its famous or perhaps infamous Roe v. Wade judgment back in 1973. And as I'm sure you're all aware, Roe v. Wade in 1973 created a supposed constitutional right for women to have an abortion. And that constitutional right applied through the whole of pregnancy. So in America, for the last nearly 50 years, it has been possible to have an abortion virtually up to the moment of birth itself. That's how radical Roe v. Wade has been in America. And it has, of course, led to the deaths of some 60 million babies. Yes, you heard that right. 60 million babies in nigh on 50 years. And yesterday, or the day before, or whenever it was, the Supreme Court overrode that decision. It repealed Roe v. Wade and also another case which depended on Roe v. Wade. And as I said, that it is now a momentous thing that the Supreme Court of America has involved itself in. But we should say about it, the first thing to understand about what's gone on in America is that the Supreme Court has not made a moral decision. It has not pronounced on the morality of abortion. Rather, it has made a legal decision. It made a decision about the Constitution of the United States of America. It said, and I'm no lawyer, and I'm certainly no expert in the Constitution of the United States, but as far as I can tell, they made the entirely correct observation that the word abortion does not appear in that 200-odd-year-old, 250-year-old document. So the original decision of the Supreme Court back in 1973 was just plucked from constitutional thin air. And it has now been overruled. But as I say, it's been overruled as a legal matter, not as a moral matter. The moral matter will be decided by the states themselves, the 50 states that make up the United States of America. Because ultimately, actually, no, not ultimately. We'll come back to what it ultimately is. Essentially, let's say, it is a moral decision. Abortion is a moral decision. It has to do with the nature and value of human life. And a very controversial moral decision it is as well, especially in America. The usual argument for abortion is it's women's rights, the right of a woman over her own body. And over the last 50 years, that has become increasingly a controversial argument, the right of a woman over her own body. Controversial, I think, for the fairly obvious reason that abortion involves more than one body. It doesn't just involve a woman's body. It involves somebody else's body. It involves a child's body. I think as a matter of as a simple matter of language, to say that a woman has a right over her own body is incontestable. We all have a right over our own body. Our bodies don't belong to the state; they don't belong to anybody else. But actually, in abortion, there are two bodies. The other way that the moral argument for abortion to say that a woman has a right over her own body. Actually, when I looked at some of the TV coverage from America as the decision was handed down, as the judgment was handed down to the Supreme Court. And I looked at the group of people who were celebrating, the pro-life group that had gathered outside the Supreme Court. And interestingly, a number, if not the majority, certainly a great chunk of them, were women of childbearing age. So when you say a woman has a right to her own body, which women? Is that the women who want abortion or the women who don't want abortion? And also the whole language of women in secular society has become increasingly non-intelligible. Back in 1973, the term woman had a particular precise definition. It was an adult human female. But in the intervening 50 years, we've had the rise of the LGBTQ plus ideology. And the term woman is a little bit more difficult to define. And I heard one of the American presenters refer to pregnant patients. What are pregnant patients now supposed to do in America? Whereas 5 minutes ago, you said, what are pregnant women now supposed to do? So if you can't define any longer what a woman is, if you don't know what a woman is, how do you know that she has any rights? in an era when biological men can compete in women's sports, in an era when biological men can enter women's showers and restrooms, then what is a woman? And if you don't know what a woman is, how do you know they have any rights? But anyway, that's the contorted world of contemporary morality in secular society. But anyway, be all that as it may, what's going to happen in America now? Well, what's going to happen in America now is it's not going to be the end of abortion, but as I say, it will go back to the individual states themselves. And something like 20 or 25, something like nearly half of the states in America have what are called trigger laws. And those trigger laws say something like this. They say in the event of Roe v. Wade being overturned, then this state will either ban abortion completely or it will restrict it tightly. And those laws, as we speak, are being enacted. That's what's happening now, as of now. A little bit further down the line, what might happen? Well, if you look at the opinion polling data in America, if that opinion polling data is true, if that's right, then large majorities of the American population, large majorities favor Roe v. Wade, didn't want it to be overturned, and believe that abortion should be available for anybody that wants it. If those opinion polls are true, then in the next sequence of elections in America, the elections for the House of Representatives and the Senate, and ultimately for the presidency itself, they will all be taken by Democrats. And they will then have the opportunity to effectively enshrine what Roe v. Wade was trying to say in American law itself. They'll be able to pass legislation through their parliamentary system for it to become enshrined in law. However, if those opinion polls are wrong, then the laws in those 25 states will stand and may well probably be joined by others. As other states will either ban abortion or seek to limit it in some way. The upshot of that, I think, will be quite interesting. The upshot of that, I think, will be on the one thing that will happen is that I think more young babies will come to be adopted. Before the abortion law in this country, there was a plentiful supply of young babies, a few weeks old, who were put up for adoption. And I raised my hand because I was one of them back in 1964. Now adoption is generally is much harder to see through, and it tends to be children who are older than tiny babies. But if what's happening in America continues, then I think you'll see a lot of young American babies put up for adoption, which for me is a win-win-win situation. It's a win for the mother because she can give the child to be brought up. It's a win for that family who accepts the child, and it is a win for the child himself or herself. So that's one thing that could happen in the longer term. The other thing that could happen in the longer term is, if you look at the demographic situation in America, for the last 40 odd years, the fertility rate in America has been, for most of that time, below replacement. What happened 40 odd years ago, which might suggest that fertility rates have declined? Yep, you guessed it. Roe v. Wade might have something to say to that. So there could be some very interesting changes that might affect American society quite broadly going forwards. But what about here? As you might say, well, that's over the other side of the pond. That's America. It's got nothing to do with us. And on one level, that's true. Things are done differently in America. Abortion is a very different issue in America to the way that it's handled here in the United Kingdom. But, and I think this is where you need to see abortion for what it is. This is where what it fundamentally is comes into consideration. Abortion isn't, well, the Supreme Court has very clearly said it is not a constitutional matter. Neither, ultimately, is it a moral matter. Ultimately, at the bottom of everything, it is a spiritual matter. Abortion is the foundation of a worldview. It's the foundation of a philosophy. It's a foundation of a whole understanding of who we are as human beings and the world in which we live. It's a foundation of the following worldview. It's the foundation of the most vigorous and powerful movement in society in my lifetime, a movement that has completely transformed society in the last 50, 60 years. I refer, of course, to the whole sexual revolution, the sexual revolution which began in the 1960s and has rolled through society in the last 60 years. That revolution stands on two legs. The first leg is the mass availability of cheap contraception, cheap and effective contraception. The other leg is the free availability of abortion on demand, or something very close to that. Those are the two legs upon which the sexual revolution stands. And that sexual revolution is a spiritual struggle. It's a spiritual challenge to us as Christians. Because as Christians, what do we believe about the human person? We believe about the human person that God created us. We are created in the image of God. Male and female, he has created us. He has told us to come together and to fill the earth, to go forth and multiply, to use the old phrase. The sexual revolution is a revolution that is aimed fairly and squarely at that understanding of the human person. The sexual revolution, aided by abortion, aided by the free availability of contraception, has completely blown apart the Christian understanding of what it means to be a human being, that a man and a woman come together in marriage for the sake of the next generation. However, the Supreme Court in the United States of America, for its own good reasons, no doubt, has kicked away one leg upon which that whole worldview stands. What happens from here? What happens in America? What happens ultimately in America, in Britain rather, and through the rest of the Western world, is in the hands of God. In his sovereign will, he has caused this to come to pass. What his purposes are, we await to find out. But as Christians, we must understand the significance of the times. We must understand what is happening, and we must join the spiritual struggle. The spiritual struggle to see ourselves as we truly are, before God, a man and a woman who come together for the sake of the next generation. Be seeing you.